This is upon further review from USCHO. And here's your host, Ed Trefzger.
Welcome to USCHO's Upon Further Review as we tackle some things we can't get to on our Monday Weekend Review podcast. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley. And Derek, we're going to let you go first with the topic that you are interested in as we look at what's going on in the different conferences.
And you know what? You gave us a little freedom to pick what we wanted to talk about this week. And, other than buy and sell, it was something that I was kind of thinking about that I wanted to go through. And I just was looking at records, and I was finding that the tops and the bottoms were really difference in overall records. And some are really different comparatively to their overall records. Some are closer than others. And if you look at the overall records, and once I kind of explain it, you guys can kind of jump in, and we talked about this before, but I think everybody will understand it. And I'll start with Atlantic Hockey and work my way to different segues. RIT is at 5-2, and these are overall records. Mercyhurst is at 0-9. There's a big difference in those two records. But then you go to Tech, 5-3, Northern 0-10. ECAC, Union 5-1-1, Quinnipiac 5-2-1, St. Lawrence 1-6-1, RPI 1-7. There's a lot of in the middles there, from the tops to the bottom. Then you go to Hockey East, Northeastern 5-1, and you got some big names at the bottom. And here's where you're going to start seeing some major names at the bottom that you don't expect. Northeastern at 5-1. BU 3-5-1, BC 2-4-1, and once again we're going overall records. And these are this one's the really interesting one in the NCHC. Miami 7-1, Duluth 8-2, Nebraska Omaha 4-2, St. Cloud 6-3, and at the bottom you got Denver 4-3-1, Arizona State 3-5, which is shocking. Michigan 9-1, Penn State 9-1, Wisconsin 6-0-2, Michigan State 5-1, and we talked about it on our Monday podcast. Their record non-conference is off the charts. Minnesota 2-7-1. So you've got the tops that are just running away with things in every conference, and you got the bottoms that are really struggling. And if you could see, every conference has top team, and every conference seems to have a bottom team. And there's a lot of in-betweens. And I just found that to be really interesting when you threw out to come up with your own topics. I don't know, you guys, does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, it does, Schools. And I'll tell you, as I listen to you talk there, and I'll get into my points of what's surprised me so far in the season, but I guess the bottom conferences that you kind of mentioned there, let's say Atlantic, let's say CCHA, ECAC, the teams that you're talking about at the bottom, I have concerns that they could get out of the bottom. The other conferences, particularly, when we look at teams like Arizona State at the bottom of the overall records, and NCHC, the bottom of the overall record in Hockey East being teams like BC and BU, these are teams that I think can get out. There are holes that have been dug that are where you have teams that probably just don't have the talent to get out. I'm not picking on anybody, but you mentioned Northern Michigan and you mentioned Mercyhurst at this point. They're both struggling. But I don't think that we can say that Arizona State is that bad. I'm concerned about them. I don't think we can say that Minnesota is that bad. I'm concerned about them. BCBU, the same thing. So there's maybe more red flags earlier in the season than we usually would. I went to the other side and kind of went for the two teams that are really standing out to me at this point that I didn't have on my bingo card going in. I wasn't sure that Wisconsin was going to be good, and now 6-0-2 right out of the gate. They're getting really good performances. And most importantly, I think for Wisconsin, the numbers in net are really shaking out. At this point, Daniel Hauser, 1.35 goals against average. He has a 940 save percentage at this point. And then, rookies, you look at freshman goal scorers, Blake Montgomery with 4 goals already. They're getting a lot of production from areas that I hadn't personally considered. And I'm not trying to say that other people weren't considering Wisconsin a team that was strong. I know that Union had a pretty strong season last year. I didn't have them as a team that was going to get right back up again, but Union out of the gate, they're playing really well. They picked up a loss this weekend against RPI, but bounced back with a win. Again, a goaltender in Cameron Corpy, 1.56 goals against average, a save percentage of .924. It's just, I feel like the defenses of a couple of teams here, Wisconsin and Union, they're really showing out right now. I didn't put Miami in there because we've talked so much about them. I think at this point, anything Miami does isn't surprising us, but that's another team that really has had a good start that we can't overlook.
Let me ask a question. These teams now, Miami, maybe you say, okay, what was the competition? But you look at teams also like Minnesota, Duluth, that have taken a big step forward from a tough season or two leading into it. The question I have is, how much does, no matter who you're playing, how much does that culture of winning and feeling that success, how much does that carry you into the rest of the season?
Everybody wants to feel good about themselves. I think that's the one thing when you get a little bit of juice and you feel good about your locker room, you feel good throughout the week, and that carries on. I think that's the one thing that you can't replicate no matter what. You can always say, I come back in that we had a 3-0 lead going in the third period against Niagara, and Niagara took it to us, and we had to hold on for dear life, and we won 4-3 and the other night, and I was not happy with how we played in the third period, but I would rather win ugly than lose pretty all the time, because you don't win. Yeah. You feel, no matter what, you can come in and say, we played really well. We feel good about how we're playing. The fact is, a loss is a loss, is a loss. And you want to feel good about winning. I mean, what's the line of Bull Durham? I love winning. It's like better than losing. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's like the culture, just winning breeds winning. And that's what, no matter what your schedule is, you play the schedule that you set up. And I joked when we started with Michigan and Notre Dame, is I got to fire my schedule maker. And unfortunately that was me. And you got to win your games. And those teams that Miami, whether their schedule was light or what, they had to win their games, and then they just fired up and they kept winning. They split with Arizona State, and that was good for them. They won their games.
It brings to mind what first-year head coach at RIT, Matt Thomas, said to me a couple of weeks ago. They're not all Picassos. Sometimes they're finger painting.
They all count the same too. You don't remember them you don't remember them in 2 years. You just remember that you won.
And that kind of leads into the topic I wanted to bring up, and we'll set a little background on it. You guys will remember this. I don't remember the name of the place we were in. It was upstairs in a big restaurant in Tampa in 2024 where we were doing our podcast, and we were talking to all the different league commissioners, and it came time to talk with CCHA Commissioner Don Lucia. One of the first things that struck me, and of course he's commissioner of kind of smaller programs, and he also came from 2 smaller programs before he became head coach at Minnesota, and is how much he advocated for those smaller teams. And he brought up something that had started to be a rumbling, but I don't think anybody took all that seriously at that point, which was he was a big proponent of CHL eligibility. And there were a lot of people who were against it at the time. And he said, I think it would be a real help for smaller programs in the smaller leagues. So he put that out there on the table. And then in a story that'll be on USCHO, I think later today or tomorrow, I had a conversation with College Hockey Inc. Executive Director Sean Hogan. He had been with CHI for about 5 years doing education. And when Mike Snee moved on to a position with Minnesota Wild, he was named the executive director in August of 2024. And he spoke to a group not long after he had that job, and he said, yeah, I think it's going to happen. It's probably going to be about 3 years. November 7th was less than 3 months after that, and it became a reality. So I think the point that I'm going to make, and it's one that I think I've said on our podcasts and also in our TMQ column at USCHO, I think we'll see kind of a few of these 17, 18-year-olds, like McKenna or so forth, who are going to come in and make a big splash, who are going to be the first-round draft picks. But I think the bulk of where CHL eligibility is going to help teams is in depth. And when you take those 325, 330 players in there and add that depth, I think you're seeing right now, even in some of these splits and upsets with top teams, I think you're seeing the impact of that right away with players who've got some experience. And something like 10% of those players are coming from U Sports, where they had aged out, had to go to Canadian universities. So you've got sophomores and juniors who are coming in with some experience too. So I'm going to make the case that Don Lucia was a prophet and was right, and he named what has happened, which is make the smaller programs have more strength. And I think that's why games are closer, and that's why you see some upsets in there.
You have to think that most importantly, it's made the average age in college hockey a little bit older. And I think that for teams that struggle to get and keep good players, some of the smaller programs, they're bringing in players that are older, have experience, and have plenty of talent. So I think the talent, we've talked about the talent pool, continuing to increase and grow this year. But I think the age too is something, and you're finding ways. It was LIU I called a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking to Brendan Riley, their coach, and he has so many new faces on his roster, tons of new players, but he's one of the oldest teams in the country too. So even when we're calling games, I'm sure you think about this too, Ed. You start to say, this is a young team, and you say, no, this is an inexperienced team, because the reality is even teams with 10, 12, 14 new faces, a lot of them have gotten older because the CHL players came in at an older age. I think that has had a huge part to do with the leveling off of players is you have some older talent.
I may disagree with you a little bit before Derek hops in, because a lot of programs are getting the 18, 19-year-old commits, 20-year-old freshmen out of places like the BCHL and so forth. So I think a lot of those teams getting the 20-year-old freshmen out of the OHL, for example, already we're getting some of the older players as it is. And these smaller programs tended to have the highest average age. So it may not be as big an impact. But if you're maybe a program that's had a lot of 18, 19-year-olds, adding a couple of those, I think, will make a difference.
And I have to say that a 20-year-old coming from U Sports that had played in the CHL is potentially a better talent player than some of the BCHL players. I'm not trying to pit leagues against each other, but just a tier 2 player as opposed to somebody that played major junior. I think I'd rather have the major junior player most times. If you're talking about same age, same everything, I'd rather have a player that went through the CHL as opposed to one of the smaller tier 2 leagues.
Well, I mean, I think no matter what it is, it's got to be the right fit for your program. I mean, you saw a kid leave already the CHL and go back, and everybody's making a big deal of it and saying, see, it didn't work. People leave the USHL or leave USHL players leave college to go back to the USHL. People leave it happens all the time. So it's not just this, it wasn't a fit. I mean, so I reached into my garbage to pull out the line chart from the other night. They haven't taken my garbage out yet today, thank God. From the Purple Eagles. They have 7 players that played in the CHL or U Sport from last year to this year. So what it does is the days of seeing a lineup, like people said, well, people called me and say, how was Niagara on the weekend? I couldn't tell you that half their players were, because you used to be able to watch them grow and say, I remember him when he was a freshman. Now he's a junior and he's just getting better and better and better. It's a new lineup. You got to figure out who they are. And with the transfer portal, with the CHL, with the youth sport kids coming in, you've got to figure out who the players are. You've got to figure out where they are. And by that time, the weekend's over. You're like, oh, I like that guy. And it's period 6. You remember that kid. Okay, we got to watch out for this kid. Okay, well, you watch them play a couple times on video, and you're like, okay, well, now you got to do this. And next thing you know, they're taking a big step on the weekend. It's still early in the year. They've got maybe 4 points in 6 games, and then they've got 2 against you. They're like, okay, I got to watch this guy. We have to match our D pair up against this line. And I mean, so it's still ever evolving, and you're still trying to figure out how this is. We talked about it being November. I think you're still going to figure out how this is. And I think this is just going to be a constant problem. Not a problem, but this is going to be constant how things are until it slows down a little bit. You're going to start seeing the CHL be more of a feeder than it's going to be on the same par as the USHL right now. I think that's where it comes down to. And is it right? Is it wrong? It's neither. It's just the new way. It's adapting. It's like when you're sitting around, it's like you're the old dude. Hey, remember when we were kids, how this was? Remember when gas was 50 cents a gallon? And there's other people like, I remember when gas was $1 a gallon. Ed's probably saying, hey, remember when gas was 20 cents a gallon?
Well, 32 cents, but
Ed's hey, remember when gas was a nickel? I mean, that's
yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah. So
remember
those old days? So I mean, I guess
but you're right.
It's the new day. Your point was if we get 3 years into this cycle and you're now seeing more players recruited out of the CHL than say the NAHL, then you're going to, coaches will know who those players are 3 years from now. They just didn't have time to learn who all these players were that came in. So there's just too many players that you have never been seen, never been scouted, never been looked at
we
in their whole life.
Couldn't watch them play.
You couldn't,
they
exactly.
were 16. They were 16. You might have watched them play at the U16. Then they went to major junior. You forgot about them until that. You didn't see them play.
Yeah.
So now you finally start watching them again. Now you're going to watch them play. So like you couldn't watch them, so you didn't see them play. And now you're going to
yeah. But this vacuum will end. It'll end soon.
And now you're going to start watching them play, and you'll like, hey, I watched that kid when he was 17 play for the Oshawa Generals, and now he's playing for Niagara. I mean, or now he's playing for Sacred Heart, and now I watched him play for Oshawa. Then he played for the Regina Pats. I mean, that's how it's going to be. It's just different. And to sit there and say we can't do it, or I'm not going to do it because that's not the way it is. It's the way it is.
That's exactly what Sean Hogan was saying to me. He said, we don't have 2 divergent paths anymore. You get kids playing youth hockey, and then you get kids playing junior hockey, whether it's the NAHL, USHL, BCHL, OHL, WHL, QMJHL. Wow. And then if they want to go to the NHL, it's through the NCAA. That is going to be the development path. Now, one path is what he says.
Watched a kid on Sunday play. He played 2 weeks ago. He played in the National Hockey League. He was playing in the National Hockey League on 2 weeks ago. On Sunday, he was playing against a guy who's going to play college hockey next year. I mean, it's different. You just have to. You can't say I liked it the way it was because it's not that way anymore. I was like, well, it's above net. He's making a lot more than above an actual necessary expenses right now. He's already played 4 games in the National Hockey League. You can't. He's not recruitable.
Yeah,
right.
At least I don't think he is. Well, I guess we'll find out. Who knows? There might be some.
It's been for way from that one, Schools.
I didn't go down and talk to him. He's not coming to Barbara Morris.
Well, we'll see how this all rolls out. But you're right. We're not going back to the way things used to be, and we just got to go along with it and enjoy the ride. By the way, you can.
It's 5 cents. 5 cents, Ed. 5 cents a gallon.
You're talking my grandfather who was born in 1909 buying 5-cent gas. Anyway, don't forget, you can also watch these on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/USCHO to like and subscribe. It helps us out, helps keep things rolling here for the website. So for Jim Connelly, for Derek Schooley, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been Upon Further Review.